My name is Chloe Davis. I'm 31 years old, and it's been 8 years since I cut ties with my family, left Redwood Creek, and never once looked back, not really. The life I built for myself in San Francisco felt a world away from the stifling air of my childhood home. I was a software engineer at FinSecure Analytics, a major fintech firm, leading groundbreaking projects on AI-driven fraud detection systems for clients like the prestigious Global Trust Bank. I wasn't just competent at my job, I was a vital part of our success, the one they turned to when complexity seemed insurmountable. I thrived on untangling the intricate knots of code, designing systems that others deemed impossible, feeling a sense of purpose that had always eluded me before. But outside the gleaming towers of FinSecure, in the small, suffocating world of my relatives, I was practically invisible. A ghost in their family portrait. We hadn't exchanged a single word, not even a cursory holiday text, since 2015. So when my phone, usually silent from that particular corner of my life, buzzed insistently on a crisp October Wednesday night in 2023, I felt a jolt of unease seeing my cousin's name flash on the screen. A video call, no less. Megan. Megan was the only one, the very last thread connecting me to that past, who possessed my current number. Her face appeared, framed by her familiar kitchen, but her usual cheerfulness was clouded by a hesitant, almost apologetic expression. "Chloe," she began, her voice softer than I remembered, tinged with a nervousness that immediately set my teeth on edge. "Your parents. Mom and Dad, they're trying to reach you. They're insistent. They want you to come home, to Redwood Creek, for Christmas this year." The words hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. I sank down slowly onto the edge of my plush king-sized bed in my spacious San Francisco apartment, the panoramic view of the city lights suddenly feeling distant and unreal. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "Now?" I managed to ask, my voice a hoarse whisper that barely sounded like my own. "After all these silent, empty years? Why now, Megan?" They've been asking around for your contact details for a while now," Megan said, her gaze shifting uncomfortably. "They seem genuinely serious this time, Chloe." Mom sounded different. I ended the call with a curt goodbye, my mind reeling, and just stared blankly at the abstract painting on my bedroom wall. Its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the gray fog descending over my thoughts. I hadn't consciously allowed myself to think about my family in months, or more accurately, in years. It was a door I had firmly shut and bolted. But now, Megan's call had jimmied the lock, and the memories, unwelcome and sharp, flooded in with a sudden, painful rush. Always the odd one out, the quiet observer, never the cherished favorite. The ache of it was a familiar phantom limb. I remembered, with a clarity that still stung, sitting hunched in a cold, unwelcoming vinyl office chair when I was just 13. My knees pulled tightly to my chest as if to ward off a blow, while Dr. Evans, my childhood psychologist, a woman with kind eyes but a direct manner, told my parents in plain, unequivocal terms, Chloe's struggles, her feelings of isolation, aren't stemming from some inherent flaw or a desire to be alone. They're a direct result of feeling consistently ignored, of her accomplishments being perpetually overshadowed. My mother, Olivia, had scoffed then, a dismissive, brittle sound that shattered the fragile hope in the room. "That's preposterous, doctor," she'd retorted, her voice laced with indignation. "We love both our children equally. We always have." But I knew, with the unwavering certainty of a child who lives by observing the unspoken, that she was lying. Her words were a carefully constructed facade, as hollow as her forced smiles. My older brother, Kevin, 3 years my senior, was the undisputed charmer, the golden boy destined for greatness in their eyes. He was the celebrated football star, the effortlessly popular class president, the one whose every minor achievement was trumpeted as a major triumph. He got the shiny new car, a gleaming symbol of their pride, on his 16th birthday, the keys presented with a flourish at a family party. I, on the other hand, received a worn, second-hand sweater from a thrift store, a garment that still carried the faint, unsettling scent of someone else's life, a tangible reminder of my place. Even at Christmas, a time supposedly for family and joy, Kevin's gift sparkled and overflowed beneath the tree, a testament to his favored status. Mine were invariably more like afterthoughts, hastily chosen and carelessly wrapped, if they were remembered at all. One year, it was a bar of soap. But this year, after nearly a decade of deafening silence, they were finally, inexplicably, calling me back. And they had absolutely no idea, not the faintest clue, of the woman I had forged myself into, the strength I had found in their absence. Family gatherings, those dreaded command performances, were always an unmitigated nightmare, a stage for my insignificance. Kevin would invariably hold court, his voice booming, his laughter loud and performative, exuding a superficial charm that seemed to magnetize everyone in the room, while I, Chloe, would recede into the background, melting into the wallpaper like a piece of furniture no one ever truly noticed or cared to engage with. It was in that suffocating atmosphere of benign neglect that I discovered the stark, beautiful logic of coding. It began innocuously enough, with a dusty, forgotten flyer I spotted taped haphazardly to the high school bulletin board. Coding and Robotics Club CRC, Room 27, Thursdays after school. Intrigued by the promise of a world governed by rules and reason, so unlike my own chaotic family life, I went once, tentatively, and then I never missed a single session. For the very first time in my young life, I felt genuinely seen, not by people, with their fickle affections and shifting allegiances, but by the clean, immutable logic of the code itself. The CRC, with its whirring fans and the clatter of keyboards, became my sanctuary, my true home. We were a motley crew of self-proclaimed nerds, united by our passion. We eagerly rebuilt ancient PCs salvaged from junkyard scraps, breathing new life into discarded technology. We passionately traded programming books like precious artifacts, debated the merits of different compilers with an almost religious fervor, and stayed late into the evenings, fueled by lukewarm soda and sheer determination, debugging each other's ambitious, often sprawling, projects. I even built my first rudimentary game, a simple text-based adventure, on a battered, borrowed laptop. The thrill of creation a potent antidote to my loneliness. Ms. Shapiro, our club advisor, a woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper wit, pulled me aside one afternoon, her gaze direct and appraising. "You've got something truly special, Chloe," she said, her voice firm but kind. "A real talent for this. Don't ever let anyone at all, shrink you down or make you feel small." Her words were a lifeline, a spark of validation in a world that rarely offered me any. By the time I was 17, armed with Ms. Shapiro's encouragement and a growing sense of my own capabilities, I had a meticulously crafted plan. I would apply to the best engineering programs, secure scholarships, leave Redwood Creek and its suffocating familiarity behind, and build my future, brick by painstaking brick, entirely from scratch. Kevin, of course, was already comfortably enrolled at the State University of California, Bayshore SUCB. A local institution he'd gotten into largely thanks to Dad's string pulling, his tuition and living expenses fully, and ungrudgingly bankrolled by my parents. Then came that excruciating Thanksgiving dinner, a memory seared into my mind. My dad, Samuel, beaming with pride, raised his wine glass high. "A toast," he announced, his voice resonating through the crowded dining room. "To Kevin, making us all so incredibly proud at SUCB." A chorus of cheers and clinking glasses erupted around the table. Then Mom, Olivia, added, her tone saccharine sweet but with an underlying edge I knew all too well, "And as for Chloe, well, we're strongly encouraging her to find some sort of steady, practical work. Something suitable." My Uncle Robert, never one to miss an opportunity for a cheap laugh at my expense, chimed in, "We're always hiring dishwashers down at the diner, Chloe. Good, honest work." The entire table, including my parents, erupted in laughter, a wave of casual cruelty that washed over me, leaving me feeling exposed and utterly humiliated. I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The knot in my stomach tightened, and I focused on a crack in the gravy boat, willing myself not to cry. What they didn't know, what they couldn't even begin to imagine in their wildest dreams, was that I had already secured a full-ride scholarship to the prestigious Pacific Institute of Technology Pitt, one of the top engineering programs on the West Coast. Tuition, housing, even a living stipend, everything was covered, earned through sheer grit and countless sleepless nights. My acceptance letter was tucked safely away, a secret talisman. I packed my meager belongings quietly, a single suitcase and a backpack, and a few weeks later, moved into a sparse, cinder-block dorm room at Pitt. The bustling energy of a new city, a welcome change. I waitressed long hours at a greasy diner, juggling shifts with a demanding course load. Fueled by caffeine and an unshakable determination to prove them all wrong, I graduated at the top of my class, summa cum laude, and landed my dream job at FinSecure Analytics, a leader in the fintech industry. Before the ink was even dry on my hard-earned diploma. 4 years later, a seasoned software engineer at 31, I had just successfully led a multi-million-dollar AI integration project for Global Trust Bank. A colossal undertaking that had pushed me to my limits but ultimately yielded spectacular results. The bonus, a staggering sum that still made my head spin, was more than enough to buy a place of my own, a real home. So, I called a top realtor in San Francisco. Within a few intense days of searching, my realtor found it. The perfect modern townhouse in a desirable Bay Area neighborhood, a sleek, contemporary space that felt like it had been designed just for me. It boasted 2 spacious bedrooms, 2 luxurious baths, a gourmet kitchen with state-of-the-art appliances, stunning exposed brick accents, and, best of all, it was blissfully close to a beautiful park, a green oasis in the urban landscape. At 31 years old, I, Chloe Davis, the girl they'd written off, officially became a homeowner. 2 weeks before that fateful Christmas, I hosted a small, intimate housewarming. It was just my real friends, my chosen family, Emily, Sophia, and a few others from work, the ones who had witnessed firsthand my all-night coding marathons, who had offered comfort when I cried over frustratingly failed code, and who still showed up, day after relentless day, with unwavering support and understanding. We sat on plush floor cushions amidst a chaotic landscape of unpacked boxes, sharing Thai takeout from our favorite local spot and sipping surprisingly good, inexpensive wine. The air filled with easy laughter and genuine warmth. Emily, my steadfast rock, raised her glass, her eyes sparkling with affection. To Chloe, she said, her voice clear and strong, the quiet one who masterfully turned years of imposed silence into undeniable power. We clinked our glasses, the sound a cheerful counterpoint to the years of slights I'd endured. I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached my eyes, but even then, a small, disquieting thought lingered at the back of my mind. A tiny pebble in my shoe. I was going home in a week, back to Redwood Creek. But this time, I wasn't returning as the invisible, overlooked girl, the one who could be so easily dismissed. This time, I was coming back as someone who knew her worth, someone who had built a life they couldn't even comprehend. The week before Christmas, a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach with each passing day, I took some well-deserved time off work. I carefully wrapped simple but thoughtful gifts, a cashmere scarf for Mom, a biography I thought Dad might enjoy, a high-quality leather-bound journal for Kevin. Then, with a deep breath, I loaded my suitcase into my car and began the familiar 6-hour drive back to Redwood Creek, the suburban neighborhood of my childhood, nestled just outside Seattle. The old house, when I finally pulled up to the curb, hadn't aged well. It looked tired. The once vibrant siding was now faded and peeling in places, the hedges surrounding the property were overgrown and unruly, and the porch light, a relic from a bygone era, flickered erratically, like a dying, unreliable memory. My hand trembled almost imperceptibly as I reached out and pressed the doorbell, the chime echoing unnervingly in the sudden silence. I could hear hesitant footsteps from within, a muffled sound, then the door creaked open with a protesting groan. Chloe, my mother, Olivia, blinked, her eyes widening in genuine surprise, as if I were an apparition. "Wow, it really is you." Her voice was thin, uncertain. She gave me a brief, almost perfunctory, and undeniably stiff hug, her arms barely making contact before pulling away. "You look different." She scrutinized me, her gaze lingering on my tailored black slacks and the understated designer coat I wore, quiet luxury, a language she clearly didn't speak. Inside, the familiar scent hit me with the force of a physical blow, a suffocating wave of nostalgia and discomfort, old wood polish. A lingering staleness in the air, and the ever-present, cloying aroma of that ancient bowl of dried potpourri that had sat on the hall table for as long as I could remember. The living room, when I stepped inside, was already packed with relatives, a sea of vaguely familiar faces. Conversations, which had been animated moments before, abruptly halted as all eyes, curious and judgmental, turned towards me, the prodigal daughter. Well, look who finally decided to show up. Someone, a voice I vaguely recognized as an aunt, muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Is she wearing sweats? Another distant cousin whispered, her voice laced with disdain, to the person beside her. I glanced down instinctively at my impeccably tailored black slacks and my cashmere blend designer coat, a deliberate choice, understated elegance. But clearly a statement lost on this particular crowd. Then, Kevin, my brother, emerged dramatically from the kitchen, a wide, self-satisfied beam plastered across his face. He exuded an air of forced bonhomie. Everyone, he announced grandly, his arm sweeping towards the woman standing slightly behind him, a nervous-looking blonde I didn't recognize. This is Jessica, my wonderful wife. He paused for effect, then gestured with a flourish towards her noticeably rounded belly. And, your future niece or nephew. A smattering of polite applause followed. Congratulations, Kevin, I said, my voice carefully neutral, offering a small, polite smile. That's wonderful news. He smirked, a familiar, condescending expression that instantly grated on my nerves. So, Chloe, he said, his tone dripping with false concern. Still, coding away in some dark corner somewhere? A ripple of uncomfortable laughter, more of a titter, spread through the room. I felt my jaw tighten, a familiar clenching sensation. I work in tech, Kevin, I replied calmly, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. I'm a software engineer at FinSecure Analytics. If you've ever walked back into your past armed with a strength and success they never once imagined for you, make sure you subscribe. Because the next part of this story, believe me, is where everything, absolutely everything, changes. Tech, huh? Kevin repeated, the smirk still firmly in place, his eyes glinting with a familiar, unpleasant amusement. So, are you fixing printers now, or maybe answering those frustrating help desk calls? He turned to Jessica, his wife, with a conspiratorial wink. Chloe was always the weird one, wasn't she? Probably still working out of some dusty basement somewhere, bless her heart. Jessica offered a weak, uncertain smile in my direction. I just managed a faint, non-committal smile of my own. Something like that, Kevin, I murmured, letting his assumptions hang in the air. Mom clapped her hands together then, a sharp, decisive sound that cut through the awkward tension. Dinner will be ready very soon, everyone, she announced brightly, her voice a little too loud. Chloe, dear, why don't you put your things down? Her gaze flickered towards the cramped space under the stairs. Kevin's been using your old room as his office for next-gen consulting, his new venture, So? You'll be perfectly comfortable sleeping on the couch in the den. Of course, he was. Of course, I would be. Some things, it seemed, never changed. The familiar sting of being an afterthought, easily displaced. The rest of the night was a slow, agonizing drip of condescension, a masterclass in subtle and not-so-subtle put-downs. Aunt Carol, Mom's sister, a woman whose unsolicited advice was legendary, cornered me by the sad, wilting bowl of lukewarm punch. Your brother, Kevin, she began, her voice oozing with admiration, he's starting his own incredible business, Next-gen consulting. He's such a visionary, that boy. Her gaze then shifted to me, her expression a mixture of pity and disapproval. And you, Chloe, you're still in computers, are you? I write software, Aunt Carol, I replied, my patience wearing thin. Complex enterprise systems for a fintech company. She scrunched her nose as if I'd mentioned something unpleasant. Oh. Well, she conceded grudgingly, I suppose someone has to do all the boring, technical stuff, don't they? Later, Uncle Robert, Dad's brother, leaned over conspiratorially during the chaotic dinner prep in the kitchen. His breath smelling faintly of stale beer. Heard you're between things, Chloe, he said, nudging me with his elbow. Just so you know, that dishwasher position is still open down at my diner. Pays minimum wage, sure, but it's honest work, good for building character. He winked, oblivious to the insult. Thanks, Uncle Robert, I said, forcing a polite, tight-lipped smile. But I'm quite good, actually. My career is doing very well. At dinner, a chaotic affair, they predictably set me at the far, undesirable end of the long, crowded table. Crammed next to the swinging kitchen door, buffeted by drafts and the constant traffic of people fetching more food. Kevin, predictably, held the spotlight, regaling the captive audience with grandiose pronouncements about his nebulous startup. This new venture, Next Gen Consulting, is going to completely disrupt the entire industry, he declared, gesticulating wildly with his fork, nearly spearing Aunt Carol's elaborate hairdo. We just need the initial startup capital to truly launch it into the stratosphere. How much are we talking about, son? Dad asked, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and paternal concern. Already reaching for his checkbook mentally. Oh, just a cool 200 grand to get things properly rolling, Kevin said, with an air of casual nonchalance, as if it were pocket change. Maybe a bit more for aggressive marketing. I nearly choked on my lukewarm water. $200,000? For that? It was every single cliché, ill-conceived, doomed to fail startup pitch I had ever had the misfortune of hearing during my time at Finsecure. My internal alarm bells were screaming. We'll figure something out, darling, Mom said, patting Kevin's hand reassuringly, her eyes shining with misplaced maternal pride. Family always helps family, doesn't it? Her gaze flickered briefly towards me, a silent, loaded expectation. After dinner, once the dishes were cleared and the relatives had begun to depart, Mom handed me a thin, scratchy blanket and a lumpy pillow, gesturing vaguely towards the worn-out couch in the den. Christmas morning dawned cold and gray, mirroring my mood. Kevin and Jessica stormed down the stairs with the boisterous enthusiasm of overtired children, their arms already piled high with brightly wrapped presents from under the tree. They unwrapped mine first, a deliberate performance, it seemed. The luxury gifts I'd so carefully chosen, the cashmere scarf for Mom, the first edition biography for Dad, the expensive leather journal for Kevin. Oh, Chloe, these are absolutely beautiful. Mom gasped, holding up her new designer bag, a last-minute substitution I'd made. Sensing the scarf wouldn't cut it, her voice filled with an exaggerated, almost theatrical, delight. Dad mumbled his thanks for the rare whiskey. Kevin barely glanced at his. But then, when it came to my turn, when the mountain of presents had dwindled to nothing, a sudden, awkward silence descended. Oh, no. Mom gasped, her voice far too loud, her hand flying to her mouth in a gesture of performative shock. Chloe. Oh, my goodness, Chloe, darling, we completely forgot. With all the excitement about Kevin and Jessica and the baby, her voice trailed off, her eyes wide with feigned dismay. Kevin burst out laughing, a harsh, grating sound that echoed in the sudden stillness. Just like when we were kids, Chloe, he chortled, thoroughly enjoying my discomfort. Always the forgotten one. He smirked, his eyes cold. Don't you dare cry this time, okay? You're supposed to be an adult now. Something inside me, something cold and hard that had been dormant for years, finally shifted. It wasn't sadness, not anymore. It wasn't even white-hot anger. It was a sudden, chilling clarity, a sense of profound and final detachment. I'm not going to cry, Kevin, I said, my voice surprisingly even and calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had just settled within me. I reached into my designer handbag, the one Mom had just admired. Actually, I continued, my voice gaining strength, I bought myself a pretty great gift this year. I pulled out my keychain, the brushed steel of my new townhouse keys catching the dull morning light, and held it up for them all to see. Mom frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. What's that, dear? She asked, her tone cautious. Keys, I said simply, my voice resonating with a quiet power I hadn't known I possessed. They're the keys to my new townhouse in the Bay Area. I closed on it last week. A stunned, uncomfortable silence fell over the room, as if a heavy plate had been dropped and shattered on the floor. Dad blinked, his expression unreadable. You bought an apartment? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. A townhouse, actually, I corrected gently. With money, Dad. Money from my job at FinSecure Analytics. My company, FinSecure, just licensed an AI-powered cybersecurity framework I personally architected and built to Global Trust Bank, a major international financial institution. My cut of that deal, my bonus, was, well, it was quite solid. Mom's eyes, which had been wide with feigned shock a moment ago, now narrowed with a sudden, sharp intensity. How solid, Chloe, she pressed, her voice a low, urgent hiss. I shrugged, a deliberately casual gesture. Oh, about $250,000, I said, as if discussing the weather. After taxes, of course. And my base salary is increasing significantly next quarter with my promotion to project lead. You could have heard a pin drop in that suddenly silent, over-decorated living room. Kevin's mouth, which had been curved in a mocking smirk, now hung agape, his earlier bravado completely deflated. Jessica's eyes widened, darting nervously between me and Kevin. Mom and Dad just stared, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and dawning comprehension, as if I just confessed to living a secret, incredibly successful double life, which, in a way, I had. $250,000? Mom finally choked out, her voice pitching up into an unnatural, squeaky register. What kind of job pays bonuses like that? I've told you, Mom, I said calmly, meeting her incredulous gaze without flinching. I'm a senior software engineer. I specialize in AI and cybersecurity. I build complex, enterprise-level security systems for Fortune 500 clients, like Global Trust Bank. Dad leaned forward in his armchair, his eyes boring into me. How long, Chloe, he asked, his voice raspy, how long have you been earning this kind of money? Since I graduated from Pitt, Dad, I replied, my tone unwavering. The bonuses fluctuate depending on the projects, of course, but my base salary has been well into six figures for quite a while now. And just like that, as if a hidden switch had been flipped, the entire atmosphere in the room underwent a startling, almost comical, transformation. Mom suddenly stood up, her face wreathed in an artificial, beaming smile, all sunshine and sickeningly sweet sugar. Chloe, sweetheart, she gushed, rushing towards me, her earlier forgetfulness miraculously vanished. Why on earth didn't you tell us any of this sooner? We're so incredibly, unbelievably proud of you, darling. She tried to embrace me, but I subtly sidestepped. Dad, not to be outdone, chimed in enthusiastically, his voice booming with newfound paternal pride. Kevin, did you hear that? Did you hear what your sister just said? Your little sister, Chloe, works with Fortune 500 companies. Actual Fortune 500 companies. Kevin's jaw, I noticed with a grim sort of satisfaction, was clenched so tightly that a muscle throbbed visibly in his temple. Jessica leaned in close, whispering something urgently into his ear, her expression unreadable. Mom, meanwhile, had perched herself precariously on the arm of my chair, her arm draped chummily around my shoulders. A gesture that felt both proprietary and deeply insincere. So, Chloe, darling, tell us all about this new townhouse of yours, she cooed, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing, acquisitive light. How many bedrooms does it have? Is there a guest room for us? 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, in a great neighborhood in the Bay Area, very close to my work at FinSecure, I recited coolly, offering no embellishments. She beamed, her smile widening to an almost painful degree. Oh, that sounds absolutely wonderful. We simply must come and visit you soon. Family should always stick together, shouldn't we? I almost laughed out loud at the sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy of it all. Family. After 8 long, deafening years of utter silence and complete indifference. Actually, Mom, I said, standing up abruptly, dislodging her arm. I've got a rather long drive ahead of me back to San Francisco. I should probably get going. Mom's smile faltered for a split second before she quickly recalibrated, her hand shooting out to grasp my arm with surprising strength. Oh, but Chloe, you just got here. You can't possibly leave already. Stay a while longer, please. Her grip was like a vice. Dad nodded vigorously in agreement, his expression earnest. Yes, Chloe, your mother's right. We haven't even had a chance to properly talk about your incredible career at FinSecure. We want to hear all the details. As I excused myself to pack my small suitcase from the den where I'd left my things, I could hear them whispering downstairs. Their voices hushed but carrying an unmistakable urgency, a frantic, conspiratorial tone. When I came back downstairs a few minutes later, my suitcase in hand, they were waiting for me at the foot of the stairs, a united front. Those eager, overly bright, strained smiles were already setting off alarm bells in my head, loud and clear. Before you head out on that long drive, Chloe, Dad said, stepping forward, his expression a carefully constructed mask of paternal concern. We really should talk a little bit about Kevin's new business opportunity, Next Gen Consulting. As you just heard, he needs a little bit of, well, seed capital, to really get it off the ground. Kevin, standing beside him, managed a weak, ingratiating smile, as if he were doing me an enormous favor by even considering my involvement. It's a really solid investment, Chloe, he chimed in, his earlier arrogance replaced by a sycophantic eagerness. You'd be getting in on the ground floor of something truly revolutionary. How much, Kevin? I asked flatly, my voice devoid of any emotion, cutting straight to the chase. Just, well, we were thinking around $300,000, he said, naming a figure significantly higher than his earlier boast. His gaze flickered nervously towards Mom and Dad for support. I mean, with what you're making now at FinSecure, that's practically nothing to you, right? A drop in the bucket? I looked at them then, really looked at them, my parents, Olivia and Samuel. Who had once openly laughed when Uncle Robert offered me a demeaning dishwashing job, my brother, Kevin. Who had spent a lifetime mocking my interests and belittling my intelligence, and his wife, Jessica, a virtual stranger. Who had chuckled along with his condescending remarks just yesterday morning. The weight of years of slights, of being ignored and undervalued, pressed down on me. No, I said, the single word clear and unequivocal in the suddenly tense silence. The smiles, so recently plastered on their faces, vanished as if wiped away by an invisible hand. What do you mean, no? Mom snapped, her voice sharp and laced with disbelief, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I mean, no, I am not giving you, or Kevin, any money for Next Gen Consulting, or for anything else, I stated calmly. My resolve hardening with each word. But we're family, Chloe, Dad stammered, his face paling, as if the very word itself, family, held some magical, unbreakable power. Some inherent obligation that I was callously disregarding. I folded my arms across my chest, a defensive posture I hadn't realized I'd adopted. Family? I echoed, a bitter laugh threatening to escape. Where was this family when I was told, in no uncertain terms, to find my own place and support myself the day after my high school graduation because, and I quote Dad here, a girl doesn't need a fancy college education? Or where was this family when you willingly paid for every cent of Kevin's tuition and living expenses at SUCB, no questions asked? But left me to figure out how to fund my education at Pitt entirely on my own, working multiple jobs while trying to maintain my grades? That was different, Chloe, Mom stammered, her face flushing a dull red. We didn't have as much money back then. Times were harder. It was a pathetic, transparent lie. You had money for Kevin, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You always had money for Kevin. Kevin showed promise, she barked, the truth finally, inadvertently, slipping out, before she immediately tried to backtrack. Her eyes darting nervously towards Dad. I mean, we thought that getting practical work experience would be better for you, Chloe. More suited to your abilities. The implication hung heavy in the air. I grabbed my bag, the handle digging into my palm. I really need to go now, I said, my voice firm. This conversation is over. You selfish, ungrateful brat. Kevin suddenly exploded, his face contorted with rage, his earlier composure completely gone. After everything this family has done for you. Everything we've given you. Done for me? I asked, turning to face him, my own anger, long suppressed, finally beginning to surface. What exactly did you do, Kevin? Or you, Mom? Or you, Dad? Raise me? Feed me? Put a roof over my head? That's called parenting. It's a fundamental responsibility, not a charitable act for which I owe you a lifetime of servitude and financial support. And you all made absolutely sure, every single day, that I knew I wasn't truly wanted, that I was always second best, an inconvenience. I walked towards the front door, my steps heavy but resolute, as they followed close behind, still protesting. Their voices a cacophony of accusations and demands. You'll regret this, Chloe. Mom shouted, her voice shrill and trembling with fury, as I reached for the doorknob. You'll regret turning your back on your family. No, Mom, I said, turning to look her directly in the eye, my voice filled with a certainty that surprised even myself. I won't. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I meant it. By the time I hit the freeway, heading south towards San Francisco and my real life, my phone, which I tossed onto the passenger seat, lit up like a demented Christmas tree, a relentless barrage of calls, voicemails, and guilt-laden text messages from Mom, Dad, and Kevin. I let it ring, then, with a sense of profound relief, blocked each of their numbers, one by one. Hours later, at a brightly lit rest stop just outside the Bay Area, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Back in my own airy apartment in San Francisco, I poured myself a generous glass of chilled Sauvignon Blanc and stepped out onto my balcony. Watching the city lights twinkle and glow below me like a carpet of scattered diamonds. Sophia, my closest friend and confidant, texted a little while later. Heard through the grapevine, aka Megan, who feels terrible what happened at the Christmas disaster. So sorry you had to go through that with them, Chloe. Don't be, I replied, a small, genuine smile playing on my lips as I typed. Honestly, Sophia, this was the best, most liberating Christmas gift they ever could have given me, absolute, unequivocal freedom. She sent back a series of laughing emojis, followed by, your mom, Olivia, is apparently telling everyone in Redwood Creek who will listen that you're an ungrateful, money-grubbing heathen who has forgotten where she came from. Let her, I wrote back, a sense of calm settling over me. Let them all say whatever they want. Their opinions no longer have any power over me. That night, cocooned in the safety and serenity of my own home, I slept more soundly and peacefully than I had in years. The next morning, I woke to a veritable flood of new messages, but these weren't from my parents or Kevin. These were from a host of aunts, uncles, and distant cousins I hadn't spoken to, or even thought about, in years, if ever. The family telegraph system was clearly working overtime. Your mother, Olivia, told us what happened at Christmas. How could you possibly abandon your family like that, Chloe? Kevin is trying so hard to build something wonderful with Next Gen Consulting. As his family, you should be supporting him unconditionally. We always knew you were the selfish one, Chloe. This just proves it. One by one, with a detachment that surprised me, I blocked them all. Every accusatory name, every manipulative guilt trip, every unwelcome intrusion, gone, banished from my life with a decisive tap of my finger. Except for Sophia and Emily. Sophia called later that afternoon, her voice a mixture of exasperation and concern. Jesus, Chloe, she sighed into the phone. The entire Davis-adjacent family is apparently imploding over this. Your mom, Olivia, has called practically everyone they know, painting this picture of you as some suddenly rich, heartless tycoon who refuses to help her poor, struggling brother, Kevin. Good for her, I said dryly, sipping my coffee. Let her spin her narrative. It changes nothing for me. She's telling people you've completely forgotten where you came from, that you've gotten too big for your britches now that you have money. Of course, she is, I replied, a weary sigh escaping my lips. That's her go-to move. It's easier than admitting the truth. God forbid they ever acknowledge, even to themselves, that the daughter they systematically ignored and belittled for her entire life actually went out and did something significant with her life. All on her own. Sophia's voice softened then, losing its earlier exasperation. Well, for what it's worth, Chloe, I am incredibly, ridiculously proud of you. You handled an impossible situation with grace and strength. It's worth a lot, Sophia, I told her, my voice thick with emotion. More than you know. You and Emily are the only ones whose opinions I truly care about, the only ones I want to keep in touch with from that chapter of my life. Are you really okay with cutting everyone else off, Chloe? She asked gently. Completely? Sophia, I said, my voice firm but gentle. I effectively cut them off 8 long years ago. The day I left Redwood Creek with a one-way bus ticket and a scholarship to Pitt. This whole Christmas debacle just made it official, that's all. It closed a door that should have been locked and bolted years ago. That evening, I met Emily and Sophia at our usual cherished spot in San Francisco's vibrant Mission District, the Digital Grape, a cozy, stylish cafe bar with worn leather booths, exposed brick, and soft, twinkling fairy lights strung artfully over the reclaimed wood bar. Over glasses of excellent Californian Zinfandel and a shared charcuterie board, I told them everything, every painful, infuriating, and ultimately liberating detail. Good riddance to bad rubbish, Emily declared decisively, raising her glass in a toast once I'd finished. Honestly, Chloe, they sound toxic as hell, the whole lot of them. Do you think you'll miss them, though? Sophia asked quietly, her brow furrowed with concern, ever the empath. I thought about it for a long moment, swirling the deep red wine in my glass, considering her question seriously. No, I said finally, the answer clear and unambiguous in my own mind. No, I don't think I'll miss them. I think, if I'm being truly honest, I've been mourning the family I wished I had, the family I never actually had, for most of my life. This just closed that painful, long unread book for good. I raised my glass, a genuine smile finally reaching my eyes. To chosen family, I said, my voice clear and strong. The ones who see you, support you, and love you for who you are, not for what they want you to be. To chosen family, they echoed, their own smiles warm and genuine as our glasses clinked together. The sound a cheerful affirmation in the cozy ambience of the Digital Grape. My phone buzzed on the table, an unknown number from a Redwood Creek area code flashing on the screen. I glanced at it, then, without a moment's hesitation, switched it to silent and slipped it back into my purse. 6 months later, a glorious San Francisco summer had wrapped the city in a blanket of warm, golden sunlight and the gentle caress of the Pacific breeze. I sat on my private balcony, a steaming mug of freshly brewed coffee in hand, watching the vibrant morning unfold on the streets below my Bay Area townhouse. It felt like I was finally emerging from a thick, suffocating fog I hadn't even fully realized I'd been living in for most of my life. Sophia, bless her loyal heart, still called me weekly with carefully curated updates from the Redwood Creek front, not because I ever asked her to, but because she knew, on some level, I still needed that tenuous connection, and because she genuinely cared. Kevin's daughter, Madison, was born last month, by the way, she told me during one such call, her tone carefully neutral. A healthy baby girl. Oh, that's nice, I said, and to my surprise, I found that I actually meant it, a small, unexpected flicker of something akin to warmth. I sincerely hoped, with all my heart, that little Madison would be loved and cherished in all the ways that I never was. According to Sophia's reluctant reports, Kevin and Jessica were still living with my parents, Olivia and Samuel, in that cramped, fading house in Redwood Creek. The big, revolutionary startup, Next Gen Consulting, was still just a lot of talk, a series of grandiose but ultimately empty pronouncements. Apparently, even the usually sympathetic relatives were growing tired of hearing about Kevin's perpetually imminent but never materializing success. Meanwhile, my parents, Olivia and Samuel, had apparently turned my betrayal and ingratitude into their favorite, frequently recited sob story. At every family gathering, Sophia relayed, they painted a dramatic, self-pitying portrait of me as the cold, ungrateful daughter who had callously vanished and abandoned her loving family despite all their supposed sacrifices. It was a narrative so divorced from reality it was almost laughable. Meanwhile, my own life, the one I was actively, consciously building for myself, had taken a turn I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. 3 months after that disastrous, yet ultimately liberating, Christmas, I met Noah. It happened at a local hackathon I'd impulsively decided to participate in over a weekend. He was a brilliant freelance software engineer with a quick mind, a gentle, unassuming smile, and a deep, inherent respect for personal boundaries, something I valued immensely. He understood the demanding, often all-consuming, nature of the tech world and, more importantly, he understood, on a profound level, what it truly meant to walk away from a toxic, damaging family. He had done it too, severing ties with his own difficult past. Work at FinSecure Analytics was not just thriving, it was exhilarating. I'd been promoted again, this time to lead systems architect for a major new AI security integration. A cutting-edge project that had the potential to redefine industry standards. The significant pay raise was, of course, fantastic, but what thrilled me even more was the intellectual challenge. The creative freedom to build something truly groundbreaking, something that mattered. My team, a diverse group of talented engineers, respected me. My ideas were valued, sought after. I was finally, after all these years, building the kind of fulfilling, meaningful life I used to daydream about from the lumpy, uncomfortable couch in my parents' dim, dusty basement. About a month ago, Kevin, ever persistent, somehow got hold of my new, unlisted work number and called. His voice, when I reluctantly answered, was awkwardly chipper, laced with a false bonhomie that set my teeth on edge. "Hey, Chloe," he said, as if no time had passed, as if no bridges had been burned. "Long time no talk. Thought we could, catch up. What do you want, Kevin?" I asked, my voice flat and devoid of warmth. "Well, Madison, my daughter, she should really meet her aunt," he began, his tone wheedling. "And, well, things are a little tight right now, financially speaking. Mom and Dad's house, it really needs a lot of expensive work, a new roof, plumbing issues." "No, Kevin," I said, cutting him off before he could launch into a full-blown pity plea. "But you don't even know how much I was going to ask for," he sputtered, his voice rising in frustration. "It doesn't matter, Kevin," I said firmly, then I hung up and immediately blocked the number. And as I sat there in my sun-drenched living room, in my beautiful townhouse, sipping my morning coffee beside Noah, who simply squeezed my hand in silent understanding, I felt nothing but a profound, unshakable peace. Everything they had always implicitly or explicitly told me I'd never have: genuine love, emotional stability, professional success. A home of my own. I had built it all, painstakingly, on my own terms, according to my own values. Sophia later mentioned, with a sigh, that Olivia and Samuel were apparently turning my old, cramped attic bedroom into a nursery for Madison. It didn't sting. Not even a little. That room, with its sloping ceilings and single dusty window, had never truly felt like mine anyway. This house, this life, this does. They still tried, occasionally, to reach me through increasingly distant cousins and bemused family friends, their attempts becoming more desperate and less effective over time. My personal favorite was a dramatically worded, guilt-tripping voicemail from Aunt Carol that Sophia had, with much eye-rolling, transcribed for me. "Family is forever, Chloe," Aunt Carol had intoned gravely. "You can't just walk away from your blood." But I already had. I'd walked away from their definition of family, from their toxicity and their conditional love, and I wasn't ever turning back. Noah and I were deep in the exciting process of planning a romantic trip to Italy next month, the Amalfi Coast, Rome, Florence. We'd been diligently learning basic Italian phrases, poring over maps of ancient temples and Renaissance art galleries, and enthusiastically bookmarking countless charming trattorias and hidden noodle shops, a nod to my love of all things pasta. Sophia messaged me one evening, a hint of amusement in her text. "Your mom, Olivia, somehow saw your Instagram post about your upcoming Italy trip with Noah. She's apparently telling everyone it's typical Chloe that you'd rather frivolously vacation in Europe than help out your struggling family." "Good," I texted back, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Maybe, just maybe, she'll finally get the message that I'm living my life, not hers. Last week, I received another promotion at FinSecure Analytics. I was appointed Chief Innovation Officer (CIO), a newly created executive role, placing me in the top 1% salary bracket within the entire tech industry. My boss, the CEO of FinSecure, shook my hand warmly. You've more than earned this, Chloe, he said, his respect evident in his eyes. Your vision is shaping the future of this company. We celebrated that night with Emily, Sophia, Noah, and a few other close friends at the Digital Grape, the champagne flowing freely. Emily, ever the pragmatist, joked, your mom, Olivia, probably somehow psychically sensed your bank balance went up significantly again that night and is already plotting her next move. Later, back on our private balcony, Noah opened another bottle of expensive champagne, the city lights twinkling merrily below us. Let's buy a bigger house, I said impulsively, feeling a surge of joy and contentment. Somewhere with more space, a large, beautiful yard, maybe even get a rescue dog, or two. Noah's smile was radiant. I love that idea, Chloe. My phone buzzed on the patio table, Sophia again, her timing impeccable. Latest from the Redwood Creek rumor mill, your mom is now telling people you must be a highly successful international drug dealer to afford your lavish lifestyle. I laughed, a genuine, heartfelt laugh that echoed in the warm night air. Let them spin their ridiculous, increasingly outlandish stories. Let them live in their self-constructed world of resentment and denial. I am too busy living mine, my real, wonderful, hard-earned life. If you've ever felt invisible, undervalued, or misunderstood in your own family, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you bravely walked away from, what kind of peace and happiness you've painstakingly built for yourself in the aftermath. Your stories, your support, they remind me that I'm not alone in this journey, and maybe, just maybe, you need that important reminder too. My advice, if I may be so bold, don't ever wait for permission from anyone else to choose yourself, to prioritize your own well-being and happiness. Build the life that truly reflects your inherent worth, your passions, and your dreams. Not their suffocating expectations or their narrow-minded limitations. And if any part of this resonates with you, if you understand this struggle, please hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to share.